Thank you all for being here. Thank you all for being present. I'm talking about really being present because I'm not about to share the usual speech. I'm about to share my testimony, my lived experience. I'm talking about my pain. I'm talking about my process. Now, some of you all never met me prior to becoming the nonprofit leader, the person that walk around promoting this brand on my chest, or not even a person standing here at this red dot. I'm talking about the little boy behind the brand. Now, while I'm not here to share a brand story, I do want you to know where it all came from. See, I was born on the south side of Chicago, and I lived at 6453 South Hermitage. And I was in a house with a lot of people. I had a big family. But imagine feeling like a stranger in that home. That's a different type of loneliness. I'm talking about being pushed out, being isolated, being pushed onto the back porch or the basement. And in that house, the message was very clear. Do not feel, do not speak, only survive. Does that make sense? I'm talking about moving at the beat of your own drum, trying to get through and navigate a very difficult time. See, here's the thing. Even though I was living with family, my uncle and my aunt and my cousin, I was still technically a foster child because I wasn't adopted. I was placed. I was managed. I was ignored. Just like that little table inside the living room that you ignored that collect dust. That was me. Invisible and scared. And once again, locked on an enclosed back porch or the basement. Not for minutes. I'm talking about hours. Not because I was dangerous, but because I was easily forgotten. Now, when you navigate that space and you live your life and you grow up because you never dealt with the childhood wounds, you become this broken and fragile adult. So, as I'm sharing a very messy story, a very beautiful story, and also a very tough story, I realize that this message is a very beautiful message. Because now we can fast forward to 2018, sitting inside of a Starbucks, coffee cup in my hand, chest full of anxiety, and I finally just fell apart. I had a very ugly cry. Yeah, you ever imagine or seen someone have a very ugly cry in a crowded place? Because for the first time in my life, I didn't hold back, I just let go. I allowed myself to fall apart. And I realized that this isn't just a breakdown, this is a breakthrough. This is a moment for freedom for me. Finally let me go. Not trying to pretend that I'm okay, but really being present with my feelings. Because when I tell people, how do you define humanity? By being honest enough to tell people how you feel. That's humanity. That's manhood. That's what it means to be a woman. To be honest about your feelings. So in that moment, the reason why it was defined as a breakthrough, because I took a moment and said, I have to get to the root of my issue. So coffee for the connection and the conversation. Hip hop for the genuine expression. And mental health to get to the truth. So shortly after that moment in the coffee shop, I started to go to therapy. And in therapy, after a few messy sessions, my therapist sat up and he said to me, Christopher, it wasn't your fault that you were abused. You was a kid. Can you imagine all those years of living in shame so much that you didn't recognize that shame was just a feeling. It was a language, and I spoke it very fluently. And I wore it like a badge of honor. But when that therapist told me that it wasn't my fault that I was abused, it lifted so much shame and unforgiveness I was holding for so many years. And so I went home one day and I wrote down 3 words that changed my life. These words on my shirt. Coffee, not just because of the connection or the conversation, because I was in a place where I can fall apart and make a rational decision to go get some help. And hip-hop being the bridge, right? The thing that changed my life. Because honestly, when I was thinking about leaving this earth, dealing with suicide ideation, I always had hip-hop to go to. I can write. I can express my feelings. In mental health, we wasn't talking about that in our community. So yeah, even though I had a breakdown that turned to a breakthrough when I was going to therapy, in that space, it taught me something. It taught me that I can not only empower myself, but I can also empower people. So in 2019, July 7th to be exact, I launched this incredible organization, Coffee, Hip Hop, and Mental Health. We had 20 people in the room who was all expressing themselves. And then a month and a half later, we had 120 people. 5 years later, we served more than 10,000 individuals with group therapy sessions and also individual sessions because we took a risk. I was able to leverage my pain. And so if anybody in the audience feel like you are alone, you are not. If you feel like you are not capable, you are not. You are more than capable to leverage your pain to turn into something beautiful because you too can become a beautiful message. And at the end of the day, I stand here alive, still breathing, still connected, still here. Isn't it amazing that one day we can look ourselves in the mirror and say, how did I get here? How am I still standing? Because you matter. And sometimes that pain that you go through, even though it hurts, is necessary. Here's the beautiful thing about everything I shared so far. I went from enjoying a cup of coffee to teaching myself how to be a barista. Teaching myself a craft, something that was very therapeutic for me. The first year of the organization, homeless, didn't have any resources, didn't know what to do. But because I stayed focused and connected to the purpose and the dream, I was able to not only operate 4 beautiful pop-up cafes in the city of Chicago, but I was able to open up my first brick and mortar on the north side of Chicago without having proper coffee education because I learned how to be resourceful. Because even when you are living in poverty, if you lean close to it, there is so much power in being the least because no one ever see you coming. No one don't expect you to come from that. So for me, I want to remind you all that no matter how messy your situation is, no matter how much you think you don't have and what you do not understand, I want you all to know that you are beautiful and you are beyond capable. And I want to leave you with this sentiment. Again, no matter how ugly it is, that situation, it can also be beautiful because we're all a beautiful mess. Thank you very much for listening.